really impressed. Last week, Rod had this little card. As I was thinking about this all week, what I should share, I kept thinking of that song, Julie Andrews and Sound of Music. Let's start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start. So, in case you didn't know, I grew up in, north of Spencer, Nebraska. Some of you maybe were up in my town for district speech recently, so that's where I come from. Grew up on a farm, and I was raised in a Christian home. We attended a very small Baptist church. Sadly, I don't remember anyone ever explaining the gospel or way of salvation to me. So when I got to be about 10 or 11, I started really having some fears, and it was in the late 60s, and I don't know when that song came out, in the year 25 or whatever that song is, Will Any of Us Still Be Alive? And I thought, well, I don't know where I'm going to be. So that scared me because I didn't know. And we'd watch on occasion whenever Billy Graham would come on TV. That was a big thing, and we'd watch the Crusades, and my heart would just be thumping in my chest because I knew he was talking to me, but I just didn't know what to do with it, and I was very shy, and just didn't have the courage to talk to my parents about it either. But when I got into the summer I was going to go into 7th grade, my cousin and I decided we wanted to go to Bible camp. And I'm pretty sure it was my cousin's idea because I wouldn't have done anything that unfamiliar. But it was a great way to get out of the hay fields, and so we convinced our parents to let us go. And for us, for our church denomination, that was Camp Judson up in the Black Hills. So I remember two things about camp. One was my cousin and I were in this cabin with all these other girls we didn't know. Most of them were going into 8th grade, so they were just that much older. And my cousin and this other girl were always fighting over the same boy all week. It was like there was only one cute boy in the whole camp. So that was number one memory. And the other thing was in the evenings we would go to what they called them Vesper services. We'd hike through the woods to this, it was like a natural amphitheater that they had carved seats out of the rocks, and it's a very cool place. And I don't remember what this speaker talked about in particular, but I just know that he presented the gospel, and he spoke to my heart. I was ready, and I realized that it wasn't enough to go to church. It wasn't enough to grow up in a Christian home. I needed to accept Christ as my personal Savior. And for this shy little country girl just to raise my hand was a huge thing. But I did, and so that was the beginning. From there, my faith was kind of slow to grow. When I came home from camp, I didn't tell anybody what I had done, and nobody asked. It's like, what's wrong with that picture? So that's why I have a great passion for camp and follow-up, and you guys know that. But I was involved in a youth group, and we had Bible studies, and so, you know, the knowledge was growing, but I really didn't really feel very firm in my foundation. And I don't want to tell very much of Steve's story, but he's part of my story. So Rod said Betty was his hero last week, so I have to say that Steve's kind of the hero in my story because it's a very important part. He just kind of showed up at our place through some mutual acquaintances of my brother-in-law. He got acquainted with my dad, started doing work on the farm just when he didn't have anything to do with his real job. And I think he really liked my mom's cooking. But my dad, several years before this, had started meeting with some men in town for a prayer meeting on Wednesday mornings. They'd go in early, and it was some businessmen and other farmers and ranchers like himself, and they were praying for guys. And well, I don't know if it was just guys, but Steve Banks ended up on their list. And it wasn't many months after they started praying for him that his story always makes me cry, that he came to know the Lord, and that was just such a jump start to my faith. I'd never been close to anyone, and just seeing this radical change and the excitement of accepting Christ. And so that was really helpful in my own walk. Well, fast forward, we got married, lived here and there, and we were feeling really dissatisfied with our lives and just kind of stuck. And we just presented that to the Lord, and we really wanted to know what we believed and why we believed it. And so God took those desires and he orchestrated this move out to LaGrange, Wyoming, to Frontier School of the Bible. We had 3 children at the time. Isaac was just a tiny baby when we moved out there, so it was a big deal. And being a full-time mom, I still was able to trade babysitting with other moms and take some classes myself. And I loved doctrine class. It's like I finally got that foundation that I had desired all these years, just finally. And I just loved that class. And another class I really enjoyed was called Victorious Christian Living. It was like, okay, now you got this foundation, but you can't just sit on the rock. You got to live life. Here's how to do it and how to walk. So that was a great class, and then some other women's classes that I really enjoyed too. And then we spent 3.5 years as missionaries in Canada. I don't want to tell that whole story. A lot of you already know it, but just having been married for 40 years, we have 6 children and now 16 grandchildren. It makes for a lot of action. It's full, it's been full, and it's messy. We live in a broken world. We can't control all that happens to us and to our children and to our grandchildren. And that's difficult because we want to have control. We want to, you know, for me, if something happens to my kids, it's like, I'd rather take on that burden. I'd rather take that pain myself than to see my kids hurting. That's just one of the most difficult things. But so with all the things, you know, I have been hurt. I have hurt people in my family, around me. I mean, it's part of life. And I can either choose to live there in the regret and the just dwelling on the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Boy, I sure could have done that differently. Well, wow, I didn't see that one coming. Or, Lord, are you sure we have to go down that path? I can't see the end of that one, you know. I don't want to go there. But one of the biggest struggles that I have had through the years is learning to implement Galatians 5, and that has become my life chapter because I needed, you know, we think of the end of Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit. Everyone's familiar with that. But I needed that first verse. It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and don't be subject again to a yoke of slavery. Because I was always wallowing in those regrets and those failures, and I'd carry them around with me instead of just laying it at the foot of the cross. I think of all the times that I've had what I would call mountaintop experiences, and we've all had those. A lot of them, for me, have been at wilderness camp because it's just been a great place to get away. It's quiet. You know, you can just get alone and really study the Word and spend some just quality time in prayer. And, you know you've met with God, and He shows you new things and new truths, and it's just so amazing. And that's where you want to stay sometimes. It's like, well, you come down and you're like, you're disappointed because that feeling fades. And But I had to learn that the mountain isn't where we live. God gives us those things. He gives us those times to prepare us and to refine us and to get us ready for the valley, because that's where we live. Life is in the valley. And it's rocky and it's dark sometimes, and there's deserts. But the desert, Steve does Ray Vanderlaan sometimes for our Sunday school, and so when he's previewing for the lesson, sometimes I would sit and listen. And one of the lessons I really enjoyed, he was talking about the desert. And we think of that as just a dry, desolate place. And yet there's always life there. And when we go through the desert, we want an oasis. We're always wanting an oasis. But in that one lesson, he was talking about God will give you exactly what you need just to take the next step. He'll give you that little bit of shade just to keep you going, just that little bit of water to sustain you. And so he never leaves us alone or forsaken or lets us go through anything we can't handle. He won't do that. Some of the things God's used, there's so many seasons in life. Sometimes there's been a ladies' Bible study that has just been life-changing for me. And I have so appreciated those times. And sometimes the study it's okay, but it wasn't super duper, but it was just the fellowship and the prayer. God uses different things at different times. But he gives us those awesome experiences, and yet he always makes sure we're needy. I sometimes want to run away from that, but God wants us to be needy, to keep seeking him in his word and prayer. Sometimes I've not wanted to go down a certain path, and yet when I do go down the path and embrace it, I'm like, wow, God, thank you. I would not have wanted to miss that. And I have to say, if she was sitting here, I would say that's one of them I wouldn't want her to have missed out on. And I asked Abby's permission to share I'm not going to share her story because someday I hope she'll get up here and share it herself. But it was one of those, well, I didn't see that one coming. And yet, wow. We've got this little grandson and our daughter living with us, and she is a great mom, and I would not have wanted to miss having her in our home, not only having this wonderful grandbaby, but having her in our home and having William in our home and getting to live life with her. She is a great friend, and it's been great to grow together. So I just have to think of seasons and how God uses every single season, whether it's in an oasis or whether it's on a mountain or in a valley. He's taking us there and he's telling our story. And, he talks in the Bible about us being a diamond in the rough. It's just so awesome to think about that. The different things he has to use to keep chipping off the things that keep us from being shiny. So, thank you.